So, as Tal said, this is a meetup about management, and I'm going to talk about it from a wide perspective of how to build a management hierarchy. So let's dive in. So, who am I to talk about management? I'm, as she said, Tal Ofer Regev. I'm in the development world for more than 12 years now. I'm an R&D director at WalkMe. I manage the core product development, a couple of teams working on the product itself. And I'm going to give the lecture today from my experience growing up inside WalkMe from a developer, later to a team leader, and then a director. Now, in case you don't know what WalkMe is the market lead of DAP, Digital Adoption Platform. That's a platform you can place on any site, any system, in order to improve the engagement and the adoption of that system with its end users. Different measures you can place are, for example, videos or walkthroughs, guides that the user can activate and use in order to complete different business processes. For example, let's say I have a banking site and I want to improve my adoption of doing a money transfer. I'll publish a walkthrough explaining how to do a money transfer, and the user will be able to go balloon by balloon, showing up on the screen, explaining exactly how to complete the process. The reason you might have not heard about WalkMe is that WalkMe sells mainly to the enterprise market, companies such as AT&T, eBay, and so on. We have less enterprises, sadly, in Israel, so it's less common here. In the 4.5 years I've been at WalkMe, we grew from 30 people to 500 people. That's about doubling the size of the company year over year. That's one major challenge we had, and the other major challenge we had is becoming a global company, having multiple offices around the world. Both made communication very complicated. Now, how did I end up at WalkMe? When a few years ago, a friend of mine came to me and told me, listen, I'm leaving my perfectly good job at a major company and I'm going to work in a company called WalkMe. When he told me what the company does, I asked him, you're leaving your perfectly good job to work in a company that draws balloons on sites? Didn't really make sense. A year and a half later, he's the CEO and I'm drawing the balloons. Now, why did that happen? And the answer is growth. The company grew from 4 people to 30 people in around a year and a half. Now, when you grow that big, communication starts to become an issue. It's hard to share a vision when you have to do it directly with 30 people, provide instructions or make statuses. And the only way to do that is by creating some kind of a structure. An hierarchy is actually a growth enabler. It enables you to talk with only a few people, and those few people talk with the people underneath them, and you have a pyramid. It's much easier to communicate this way. Now, when he came to me a year and a half later and he asked me to join, he told me, listen, I'm going to need managers soon, a team leader. And he came to me for a certain reason, because he thought I maybe have the skills that fit his needs. Now I'm asking you guys, what do you think is needed in a manager in a high-tech company? Don't be scared, or I'll choose people.
Responsibility.
Responsibility, all right. Something else?
Human people skills.
Personal skills, people skills. The answer is it depends, okay? It depends on the company's size, it depends on its stage, on its structure, it depends on its culture, its business needs. And the more complicated thing is, it changes a long time. You won't necessarily need the same people in management positions at different stages of the company or when the business model changes. And I'll show you that, I'll show you that transition in WalkMe. So when we started, when I got there, when we were 30, 50 employees, we looked for executors, for commando team leaders that can make any task happen, all-around players, familiar with everything, can take responsibility on anything. They had to be very technical, what we call hands-on, in order to be able to execute those different tasks, or in case someone wakes them up in the middle of the night to handle some problem, they're able to do it themselves. And they had to be business oriented. They went on calls with customers. They instructed the different departments in the company how to execute things. But as the company grew, suddenly the size of the company caused us to look for other skills. We needed people that have management skills, organizational skills, people that are able to coach new developers in order to make us able to scale and make the company larger. They had to be technical, but not as technical as before. They need a higher level understanding because they only need to be able to make decisions and have the authority to do them. And making this transition could be complicated. When we made this transition, I had a guy in my team that he told me he wants to become a developer, but he wasn't the most technical person in the team. And at this time, I started to understand we're going to need different skills, but not everybody in the company. And it took me a long time to push the understanding that we actually need a different profile suddenly. And that other profile can maybe deliver better results or the same results, at least, as the profile we looked for before. And he's doing an excellent job now as a team leader, so I hope I did the right decision. Now, let's say we've decided on the profile of the manager we want. How do we find that manager? That depends on the way you choose to grow. If you choose to grow organically, that means from within the organization, we're talking about promotion. If you choose to grow non-organically, it means either recruitment or acquisition. We're not going to dive into acquisition now because acquisition is a whole huge different subject. We're going to talk about promotion and recruitment. Now, promotion is something that you don't want to get to the point that you need to promote someone and then seek that person. That's something that you should always search for those you want to promote. And they should have at least either the interest or the potential to do it. Now, in case it's people with the potential but not the interest, never try to force it on them. The last thing you want is to create antagonism and have a manager that doesn't really want to manage in a management position. What you need to do is you need to expose them slowly to it, because they might think that the manager only attend meetings and write documents. They don't necessarily see the other good side and fun sides of management, being able to have a say in things, guide the ship, and nurture new developers coming in. Try to expose them to that and see if their mind changes. Groom them. Start giving them tools that are needed for a manager, even if they're not the next person to become a manager. Set them goals to achieve with those tools and give them feedback if they fail. Give them positive incentives if they manage to achieve those goals in order to make them, push them more and more towards the direction of becoming a manager. Make sure they face reality. One of the most common mistakes that managers do is when they choose someone they want to promote, they start giving them all the cool stuff, the big tasks, the ones with exposure. And when that person becomes a manager, suddenly he faces reality, he gets tasks that are not that fun, not always in the spotlight, and you don't want to find out then that he has a dedication problem. Give them tasks just like anyone else. Even give them the harder tasks, and make sure that they are still dedicated and they are willing to face them. Another problematic thing is those people are part of a team, part of a certain level in the company, and if they're gonna manage later, they might manage their friends, and you want to create some kind of authority for them. You got to start working on it early. Give them the option to maybe nurture an incoming developer, a new developer. That's an indication of authority. Ask people to, when people ask you questions, tell them to ask that person. Ask for guidance, maybe make the calls and some kinds of decisions. Any indication of authority will help here. And one last important thing is never promise something you can't deliver. Don't tell that person, listen, I'm going to make a manager out of you. Because if he won't get to that point, or if it's going to take him a long time, you might lose him along the way. You can push someone towards that direction without giving that specific promise. make sure they prove worthy first and then offer the position. Now, recruitment is the other method we have in order to find the developers we want for our organization. The recruitment process starts with going over CVs. Hopefully you're going to get tons of these. Hopefully you have the HR to help you filter them. And when you go over CVs, you got to look for indication of excellence. You want to have excellent people in your company. They don't necessarily need to fit with the knowledge and current skills, but you want to find those that can fit into any organization. And the best way to do that is look at the companies and position he's been at. If there is a big difference between being a small developer in a side department in a major company and being in a key position in a startup. Another thing you want to look for is promotion. If a guy was promoted once, you want to make sure that he got promoted because he deserved it and not because he was at the right time at the right place. If he was promoted twice, that's already an indication of excellence. Probably the company sees a potential, a big potential in him. If he was promoted 3 times, well, send his CVs to us. Now, technical skills, that's the last thing you want to search for. And I don't mean search for the guy that knows specifically Node.js or Angular or any other technical skill. You should look for people that have either wide range of knowledge, that you know that you will learn anything new you're going to drop on them, or on end, deep understanding of specific fields they got to. Because you know they're going to dive into anything that you're going to drop on them. And if they're excellent, they're going to close the gap, even if they don't know that technology, especially managers. Now, the next stage after you chose the CVs you want to interview is an interview. An interview should be multi-stage and structured. You want to have many people assessing the person, and you want to have it structured well in order to be able to compare those people to each other. Trying to guess, comparing later opinions between different people and trying to give levels when different people give them and you don't give a specific guidance, that's a problem. And you might lose people with potential only because the wrong people gave you their opinion. Try to assess character and management skills, and the best way to do that is with open questions. Ask them, give me a success story. In this way you can hear one of his success stories. You can understand how he defines success. You can listen and try to understand whether he talks from I did it or we did it, whether he sees himself or the company. And try to understand if it fits the culture of the company. If he's going to be part of a group, he's going to be part of a management group, later he's going to be part of his own team, he's going to be part of the company. You want to make sure that the culture fits. And one last thing is, you want to make sure that he has the same technical standard as others. He doesn't need to be the strongest person in the team. We already said that. You're looking for a manager. So he has to pass the same tests, but he doesn't have to have the perfect score in them. Now let's say you found that right person, but if he does have that indication of excellence, you're probably going to have problem signing him in because he's going to have tons of offers on his table. Now how do you make sure he signs your offer? So the best thing to do is ask him, what are you looking for? And then adjust your pitch. Now I'm not saying lying. If you're going to lie to that person, you're going to lose him later on after he finds out, and you're going to lose your name in the market. What I'm saying is ask what interests him and then find your competitive edge in this field. I had a developer coming in not long ago that he ended up coming to the company because he thought it's a cool company. He wanted to have an interview, but he was looking for a small startup because he wanted to make a startup of his own one day. And I told him, you want to get experience in order to succeed in a startup. Going to the small startup doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get the right experience, because if the startup fails, that doesn't give you the experience you need. Going to a company that succeeds and have a business running and already moved through these stages, where you can consult with people that were there just 2 years ago, and you can ask them, and you can see how things are working, I think that's the first stage you should go through. And that's showing a different perspective on the same thing. Now, after you found that right person, you want to onboard him. make sure he gets the right experience, becoming a very good manager in your team. And that depends, the content of the training you're going to give him depends on the source he came from. If he came from within the organization, that's probably the first time he manages. And you want to make sure you give him tools in order to manage, which means management tools. Could be technical tools, teaching in Jira and so on. Could be tools such as how to motivate, delegate, create dedication. If he's from outside of the organization, he probably already has management skills. That's why you took him. So teach him about the DNA of the company. Teach him about the processes, the departments, the product of the company is going to work on. Now, one of the best methods in order to get both these things is let him shadow another manager. Prepare to all the meetings with him, attend to all the meetings. Even if it's not the best manager in the team, he's going to learn both from the mistakes and from the good things he does. and that's probably the best way to learn. And he's going to have someone he already feels he's comfortable asking questions. Now, one more thing you want to do, and that's probably one of the hardest when onboarding, is slowly releasing the rope and giving more and more responsibility and freedom. And that's probably hard because you don't want to have a new manager making mistakes, but on the other end, mistakes is probably one of the things you're going to learn best from. So you shouldn't be afraid about that. But if he does mistakes, you want to make sure he does them in a small scale. So grow his team slowly. Let him manage one person first. Make sure he manages to work that out. Add another person. Try to add a senior person to his team as soon as possible in order for him to have another people that he can use in order to guide people inside the team as it scales. Now, after the person got onboarded and started working as a new manager in the department or company, all managers tend to fall into some kind of pitfalls. And I want to give you an example of a few pitfalls that are pretty common, and I think you should try to see that make sure that he doesn't fall into them, and if he does, indicate that to him and make sure that he notices that. So the first one is that managers sometimes, when they do the switch from being a developer to becoming a manager, they don't always know where to place themselves on a scale of between being close to the employees and close to the company. And some of them place themselves more closer to the employees because they were just one of the employees. And this could result in them being too protective, not telling their employees everything they should tell them, such as they're wrong. And it could result in them not showing an understanding with the company's vision or perspective. On the other hand, they might try to prove themselves and try to be closer to the company. I'm part of the management now. And this could result in them losing the loyalty of their team if they are too strict and do not show an understanding to what their people are saying. And that brings us to communication issues. Team leaders new managers don't always understand exactly how much of the information they have they need to expose or withhold. They don't understand they need to give feedback, whether it's positive or negative. Negative will make them improve, and sometimes they're overprotective and they're not direct enough and honest enough. Positive feedback will also make them improve because you give them positive incentives, and they don't always understand that you need to give positive feedback as well. Another problem is they're not always sharing the information that is business-oriented. They don't understand that providing the business needs and the company's vision is crucial for the developer in order to complete his task correctly. If you don't understand the business needs as a developer, you're probably not going to develop the thing that's going to answer them. And passing this on is also a problem that doesn't always happen. Another problem is them sometimes being productive but not efficient, and there is a big difference between the two. Giving the wrong tasks but making sure people work all the time, or making a big task and not understanding that you first need to finish the MVP of the task, the main part that already delivers value to the customers, that QE will start testing that early, that's a problem. And they need to understand they first need to be efficient and deliver their results as fast as possible and with the most important part first. And if they don't do that, they're just being productive. So everyone works, but there is no value coming out of it. Another common problem is trying to do everything yourself. Well, you just did that before, and maybe you got promoted because you did that the best. So if I do that the best, why shouldn't I continue doing it? And that's wrong. Even if you do it the best, you should still delegate. If you know how to do it well, instruct them how to do that. Make sure they get to the same point that you are in, that you are at. Another thing, after they did the onboarding and you made sure they're not falling into those pitfalls, is you have to continue and nurturing them a long time. Your job is not over once those managers became managers and once they feel comfortable and they're not falling into those common pitfalls. Your job will continue so long as you're managing them. And there are different aspects that you have to notice. The first one is that you have to continue in doing exactly what you expect from them. First of all, by being an example of a manager, they're going to learn from you. Second of all, this shows them the different practices that they should do as well. If they need to give, if you expect them to give tools to their employees, give them tools. If you expect them to delegate tasks to them. If you expect them to create dedication or motivation, try to do that as well with them. Communicate constantly. Just like we said, a pitfall that he might fall into, you shouldn't fall into it as well. Sharing a vision, okay, and giving them feedback all the time, whether they're good or wrong. Try to do it all the time, as frequent as possible. I have weekly meetings with my team leaders, and that's the easiest thing to move in the calendar, and I never move it outside of the same week. I always try to find time for it, even though you'll always have more urgent things. Sharing the vision and involving in decision making, that's very important because they became managers in order for them to have an effect. If you're not letting them have that effect outside of the scope of their team, you're going to lose them pretty soon. You want to make sure that you involve them in the decision making in the company level. Ask them their opinion on decisions being made. Even if you don't accept those opinions and they don't move on, even if you just consider them, that's already an indication for them that someone is listening, that they are part of the decision making in the company. Bind them as a group. You're not going to always be there. Hopefully, at least once, 2 weeks a year, you're going to be on some Caribbean beach drinking cocktails, and you want to make sure they are able to manage on their own at this time. And having them binded as a group, even if you're not there, they're going to have people they can consult with, people that they can ask questions, maybe ask for assistance if they do not complete their tasks in time, if the other team has more capacity. We do that with having a weekly forum in which everybody attends. We always try to make sure that everybody gets to that forum. We do that by having different courses, management courses or activities together just for that management level. Do not bypass their authority. The last thing you want to do is micromanage their people. If you go and give a direct order to one of their people, it's going to come back to you with the questions about that task. You're going to answer, it's going to come back to you, and pretty soon you're going to find out the other manager is outside of the loop. He's not managing the task, and you're managing that task on your own. You became a team leader. That's not something you're going to look for. Now, one last and important thing is, what do you do with those you do not manage? You do not promote. And that's a very complicated question. I think the best tip I can give you is to be honest and direct. It's very easy to try and avoid the direct answer of, I don't think you're good enough to be a manager yet. But if he's not going to hear that from you and the reasons for it, he's not going to try and improve and get to that point. And if he's going to think that you're trying to avoid it, you're going to lose him, even as a developer. Another option you have is try to creating different promotion paths. If that person will never fit management, but is an excellent developer and he has a very good technical understanding and high-level understanding, try to create other promotion paths, such as maybe becoming a senior developer or becoming an architect. Maybe create management positions that do not require managing people, such as operational positions. Now, one important thing about not promoting someone is that it's much harder if you do bring someone else from outside of the company to that position, because he's probably going to think, listen, I've already showed value in this company, I already have results, and you're bringing that other person that I don't know what he did. So in case you do bring someone outside of the company to a position that you know your people wanted that specific position, you got to go and explain to them, why did this person deserve it more than they did? And again, be honest and direct. What achievements he had? Why does his specific knowledge is more relevant? And that's it. If you have any questions, that's the time. Okay, so I'm going to summarize. You're asking how to evaluate a manager, both professionally and his interpersonal skills, right, and his management skills.
Entirely ethical.
Oh.
How do you evaluate him ethically?
How you evaluate him ethically? Okay, so it's much harder to evaluate those skills. It's not like taking a look at GitHub and you know exactly how much comments does he write in his code or not. As I said, usually what we do is we ask open questions, which are you give him a place to express himself, and then you start digging into corners that that have some kind of indication to how he acted in that specific moment. What did he say to that specific person? You try to have an indication from the way he tells different stories about his experience. The only way you can measure a manager is from the experience you have of the interaction you have with him, and the experience he's telling you he had from previous interactions he had. Now, the other good way to have an indication about a manager is recommenders. People that recommend him. This is much more important in case of a manager than in case of a developer, because again, it's much harder to estimate him. People that worked with him can give you a very good indication, and try to get to the people that he didn't necessarily provide you with. Try to get to people, find out which companies he worked from. You have his CVs, and try to get to other people in the company, even not necessarily the people that managed him, maybe people that were in his team, which they don't usually provide. So he asked, how do I decide whether I want to promote someone from within the organization, or do I choose to recruit someone from outside of the organization? Ideally, I want to promote someone from within the organization, and I'm even willing to compromise on some things in this case, because first, it's very important in the message it gives to the people in the company. It shows them that they have place to grow. If they prove themselves, they can get to all kinds of positions and places in the company. And also, if that person, the experience that person has, he won't have a management experience, so it's not fair necessarily comparing him to a manager you're bringing from the outside. If you think he has the potential, then maybe it's enough. He asked that are managers mostly managing or also developing and being hands-on? As I said about the skills you're looking for in a manager, it depends. It depends on the company's profile. Is it very technical or very business-oriented? If the company is more business-oriented, it's probably going to need to communicate more and manage processes. It depends on the size of the team, on the size of the company. In our company, usually a manager with a big team will have not a lot of time programming himself. If it's a small team, he's going to have maybe around 50% of the time. He asked whether whether it happened that I promoted someone that was a developer and suddenly he's managing a team, and he's trying to both develop and manage, and he's overwhelmed with it. So yes, it happened. As I said, that's one of the pitfalls of a manager. He's going to try and continue doing things himself, and you got to force him not to do that. And if you catch him doing something, tell him you got to delegate that. Try to indicate problems that were created because of the situation. He wrote something and he didn't have time to fix the bugs on it, so he placed it on someone else, and that's not that efficient. He wasn't there when the problem came up later, and so on and so on. He asked, what happens in case you promote someone and then you find out either he's not interested or he's not fit for that role specifically, for the management role. So if he's not interested, that's easier. It's easier to explain it to everyone else. It's easier for him to go back to a developer position. It's complicated since you need someone else to go into his fit, and you won't always have two people in the pipeline. So maybe sometimes you need to continue managing for a little bit longer, and maybe you'll have to do some kind of metrics management or manage directly up until you find a person to take this position. If he's interested and he thinks he's doing a good job, but he's not really doing a good job, that's more complicated. And first you need to try and improve him. I think that most people, if they're interested and they are dedicated, even if they don't have the perfect skills, they can do a good job. They're just going to have to invest more. So try to guide him, try to push him to the right direction, try to give him indications of what are the problems he's doing. If he's still doing a bad job, I think you have to be honest and direct and tell him that, and offer a different position, try to find another place that he can express his, try to understand why he wants to be a manager, even though he's not good at it. If he wants to have effect, try to find a different position he has effect in. If he wants to manage people, but the problem is not technical enough to lead a team, maybe offer him a different position in another department in the company. And if none of this works, then he has to go to and be a developer. And if he doesn't accept that, you might lose him. There's no good answer for that. Other questions?
Thank you.
Welcome.